Macron has finally found a solution to France's immigration problems, ending immigrants to the front lines of the Russia-Ukraine battlefield. France has long been plagued by immigration issues on one hand. Illegal immigration is difficult to curb, and border control is stretched thin on the other hand. A considerable number of legal immigrants are at the bottom of society, which not only brings negative effects to France's economy, but also poses serious problems to France's public security. Now the Macron government's proposed solution is to grant legal residency to eligible immigrants, but with a condition: they need to participate in a lottery, and 10% of those selected will be forced to join the military. Most of these selected individuals will likely be sent to the front lines of the Russia-Ukraine battlefield. The current Russia-Ukraine battlefield is no longer the Middle Eastern small countries that France could easily dominate in the past. Being sent to the front line is basically equivalent to a death sentence. The root cause of this policy being put on the agenda is that France can no longer conscript enough soldiers domestically. In the past, although French young people were not exactly eager to join the military, France at least had a stable source of military recruits. But now, recruiting soldiers is as difficult as begging for immortality. Polls show that only 3.2% of domestic French young people aged 18 to 28 are willing to consider joining the military, a figure that has plummeted by 70% compared to 5 years ago. The core reasons are: first, France's policy on the Russia-Ukraine battlefield has low recognition. Most French young people explicitly oppose the government's deep involvement in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, believing that it is paying the bill for U.S. hegemony, and there is no need to push the French people to the battlefield. Second, the risks of the battlefield have exceeded the psychological bottom line. Russia's overwhelming advancement on the front line is there for all to see. Domestic French young people are unwilling to bet their lives on a hegemonic war that has little to do with France's domestic security. Let us talk about France's foreign legion system. In the past, there were indeed international students who had setbacks in their studies, or immigrants with poor economic conditions who would voluntarily apply to join the French Foreign Legion. Although the Foreign Legion also participated in overseas operations at that time, most of them were targeting countries with weak military capabilities such as Libya and Somalia, and the risks were controllable. During service, they received a monthly salary of more than 1,500 euros with free food and accommodation. After 3 years of service, they could apply for French nationality, and there were additional allowances and benefits. For immigrants at that time, this was a feasible path to exchange a few years of military service for a stable life, and some even regarded it as an opportunity to change their fate. Yet the current policy is basically a death invitation. In the past, it was voluntary choice plus reasonable rewards. Today, it is forced lottery plus a fate of barely surviving. In the past, the battlefield was a dimensionality minus reducing strike. Now, it is a meat minus grinder minus style attrition. What is even more insidious is that this policy precisely targets the weakness of immigrant groups' residency rights in France. For those immigrants who have drifted in France for years and yearn for legal status, residency rights are the core goal of their leaving their hometowns. The Macron government has exactly turned this hope for survival into a coercive chip. If you want status, you gamble with a 10% mortality rate. If you refuse to gamble, you continue to live a precarious life, or even face deportation. The policy has also set its sights on street homeless people and petty criminals. Some French politicians have publicly proposed that leniency can be shown to such groups as long as they agree to participate in the military recruitment lottery. They can have their penalties reduced or obtain temporary housing, but with the prerequisite that those selected must join the military unconditionally. In essence, this is treating vulnerable social groups as garbage for recycling, filling the war gap at the cheapest cost. It is exactly the same trick as when France forced young people from African colonies to enlist and die during the colonial era. Back then, hundreds of thousands of African youths died on the battlefield for France, only to be met with indifference and discrimination after the war. Today, Macron is repeating the same old trick, except that colonial youths have been replaced with immigrants, and forced conscription has been packaged as a welfare exchange. From a practical perspective, France's model of trading residency rights for soldiers is a helpless move amid its military recruitment crisis. The conflict between the domestic recruitment dilemma and the demand for military input has forced the government to seek alternative solutions. But from a value perspective, this practice of forcibly linking immigrants' right to survival in the lives of grassroots people to military service is clearly completely inconsistent with the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity that France has always advocated. When a country treats immigrants' right to survival as a bargaining chip in the lives of its underclass as a tool to solve problems, its so-called civilization may have already vanished without a trace.